Welcome to Real Estate and Taxes with Lakshay, where we help you minimize your taxes.
So, all right, good afternoon, everyone. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about how can we double our rental income. A lot of you are realtors, a lot of you are investors, and a lot of you have a lot of clients, right? Today's topic might be worthwhile for someone who already has a home, someone who has already invested in an investment property, or someone who is actually, already taking the advantage of renting their basement. This is a strategy that I wanted to communicate to someone who are already homeowners. So without further ado, let's get started. My name is Lakshay. I am the Director of Finance with Save Match Group of Companies. And today's strategy, we're going to be focusing a lot more on how we can double your rental income. So let's get started. So a lot of you guys already have rental income. So we have the detached home, we have the semi-detached home, as well as we have a townhouse that we can rent out. Some of you might have a condo in downtown or nearby areas where also you can take advantage of rental income on a month-to-month basis. Very recently, a couple years ago, legal basement was a new phenomenon that was introduced where people will have existing basement where they will convert it into a dwelling, which is an apartment with its own kitchen, with its own separate legal entrance. And that has become very popular in terms of increasing the rental income on a month-to-month basis. Now, the third and the most important one that I wanted to discuss with you today is garden suites. Starting February 2022, there's a new announcement by the government of Ontario in terms of allowing detached home, semi-detached home, or townhouses build another dwelling within their principal residence. What do I mean by another dwelling by their principal residence? I mean to say a laneway house or a garden suite outside in the backyard where they can generate additional rental income. So what are garden suites? They're basically detached secondary dwellings which you can rent out on your principal residence. They're self-contained residential unit with separate kitchen. It must have separate sleeping facilities, utilities, even like the meters to track the utilities is separate sewage for them. And this has become really popular very recently. It was introduced in various cities across Ontario. Toronto is not one of them, but if you live in Brampton like myself, you are on the list where you can construct this garden suite. The whole point of adding this garden suite is to generate an additional rental income source for you and your family. The maximum size, the requirements, the lot size, the height, all of these need to be first basically approved by the city of Brampton or whichever city you are in. The size for Brampton, the maximum one that you can construct is 376 to 861. Most of them are limited to 376 max size when it comes to a smaller house where there's just a backyard where you want to add the garden suite. It is intended to scale the separate housing unit that integrate sensitively within the existing residential neighborhoods. The name of the garden suite can also be called laneway housing or additional rental units, and it has become very popular, and it was just launched in February of 2022. So how do they technically look? You can see on the screen basically there's three variations that I have shown here. So if you notice here, you have the principal dwelling and the garden suite. Garden suite can be like a garage that you had separately that you can technically convert into a garden suite. So in this scenario, this is the principal dwelling, and in your backyard or the front side or the side of the house is where the garden suite is located. Another variation is sometimes the older houses have a separate garage, and on top of the garage, you can build out a garden suite. The third variation is basically beside or behind the house is where most of the people try to build it. So it's separate entrance, separate parking, as well as, everyone has their own privacy when it comes to having, when you're living in this house. So areas that qualify for the garden suites, you have the Cavan Monaghan, which I don't know where it is. We have Bradford, Brampton, Hamilton, Welland, Guelph, Barrie, and Kitchener. So if you have investment properties in Brampton, Kitchener, or some of the areas that are familiar like Hamilton, you can certainly look into building out a garden suite. There's lots of requirements that you need to get approvals for before you start the building. The first step would be basically to get zoning. and it's $200 fees that's the first step. And check if your zoning allows you to even build a garden suite. Let's look at some of the benefits of having another garden suite. Of course, it can create a better rental income for you guys, which was the main topic. You can technically double the rental income if you just have a basement that is rented right now. If you add a garden suite, it's a game changer. You can get up until $2,500 a month from this additional home that you can create. But besides creating additional rental income, you're also increasing the value of your price because your return on investment is increasing. Now, when the time comes to sell the house, you're gonna have more buyers bidding for your house. The additional rental income can help you in the additional mortgage. It adds additional unit to your housing units, higher return on investment. And it also is another affordable housing for senior and individuals. So let's assume if you have a grandparent or granddad or grandmom retired and you want to have them near your house or maybe in the same house, this can certainly be a very good option because they have their own house and they are within the vicinity if you want to reach out to them whenever it's within basically your proximity of the house. So even for multi-generational families that want to live together, this is something that can certainly be very worthwhile for you and to basically explore a garden suite. So what are some of the criteria for adding the garden suite? Like I mentioned, zoning is the very first step that you want to apply for and see if your individual house actually even qualifies, right? For Brampton, it's $200 where you apply for the zoning and then get approved or disapproved for adding a garden suite in your backyard. There's also requirements for lot size, the maximum unit size, which I mentioned, like 376 square foot, the maximum height that you can build. You should have an additional parking space for the garden suite. The separate utility connections. This is also another one of the bylaws when I was reading through for the garden suites. These are some of the things that are very important to consider when you're building it out. And the best bet would be to hiring an urban planner to go through all of these steps. Right? Everyone is a realtor or everyone is, busy with their day-to-day lives and within the Zoom session. So might as well involve someone who's a little bit more experienced that can take you through all these steps because it is a time-consuming process, if you ask me. So what are some of the general requirements? Like I mentioned in the previous slide, I mentioned about unit type was detached, semi-detached, or townhouse. These are the three types of units that can have the additional garden suite. Some of the exceptions is floodplain areas or lodging houses like cottage homes. They are not qualified for building an additional rental unit, which is a garden suite. You must have one additional parking spot when you create this a second dwelling. Some of the provisions, including the location, must be rear or the side yard only. The maximum size of the unit, like 376. The setbacks in terms of how much area is being covered, the dimensions are given here, the height, as well as the access from the pedestrian path so they can unobstructedly go to the backyard without any going through your own house. So that is something that is certainly being considered when it comes to building out a garden suite. One of the things that I want to give a disclaimer on is these requirements I got from the city of Brampton because I personally live in Brampton, so there's a little bit of a bias there. But feel free to go to the website and check for your city what are some of the requirements, what are the height requirements, what is the maximum size that you can build, and what are the costs associated with it. I have one client of mine who's actively building a garden suite, and without taking any names, they're approximately spending $200,000 of their own hard-earned money to build a garden suite. And the max size they are building is 376 square foot, and they're potentially looking at an additional rental income of approximately $2,500 to $2,000 a month. So certainly, a big investment, but also the return is there as well. Now you guys know I'm an accountant. I love talking about taxes. So here's me trying to, incorporate the tax aspect when building out a garden suite. So most of you guys know whenever you build an additional legal basement or a basement to your house, the cost can be significant. How can we, minimize our taxes when we are, building our garden suites? Garden suites is technically considered to be an additional dwelling because it's substantial construction to your house. It will be added to the cost of your house. So if let's assume you purchased the home for $700,000, after the $700,000 you spent $150,000 on building a garden suite, your adjusted cost base now increases from $700,000 to $850,000. So what does the adjusted cost base mean? It just really means that when it's time to sell the house, let's assume you're selling the house for $1 million. Your capital gain will not be 1 million minus 700, which was the initial purchase price. It would actually be 1 million minus the 850,000. How? Because you have constructed $150,000 worth of additional capital within the house. So this is certainly a good investment for you because it reduces your capital gains when it's time to sell your house from 300,000 to 150,000. So, certainly good investment point of view, good taxation point of view, and of course you have to pay capital gains. Will the Laneway house add to your property taxes? The answer is yes. There will be a separate assessment done once it's constructed, and you will basically be paying a higher property tax. Now let's look at the HST aspect of it. The taxation point of view, you're paying capital gains tax, which is 50% taxable. From the HST point of view, it really depends on the intent when you're building the house. If the intent is to actually live in the house, then you will not be subject to the HST GST. Well, you will be subject to GST HST, but you can claim it under the new housing rebate. And if your intent is to rent the house, you can claim it under the HST rental rebate form. So let's look at an example. So for example, Brian constructed a Laneway house to be used for his primary residence for his elderly parents, right? If you have an elderly parent in the house that you are constructing this garden suite is for, you may be eligible for the GST new housing rebate, which means that all of the HST that you're paying to the contractors when you're building the house, you can technically claim it back. Now let's look at an example where you are planning to rent it. So Monique in this scenario purchased the property from the builder, and in the Laneway house, they basically wanted to rent it. If she leases the house to a non-relative, then she is eligible to claim the GST HST that she has paid to build the house under the new residential rental rebate form. So both the scenarios, you're able to claim the rebate for your HST. It just depends what your purpose was. If the purpose was for actually principal residence, then you do it under the new housing rebate, HST rebate. If it was for rental, then it would be the HST new residential rebate form that you can claim the HST for. That basically brings me to the end of the presentation. We talked about the benefits, the additional costs, the sizes, as well as how you can technically double your rental income. Thank you very much, guys, for joining in. Really appreciate everyone coming in. We'll be doing another session at 2 p.m. next week, so feel free to join that as well. Thank you very much once again. Take care.